functional groups is basically what makes the molecule react. So we're starting off with an ethane. Ethane is just made up of a carbon and a hydrogen in a single bond. If I ask you, is this molecule polar or non-polar, what would you say? Non-polar. And how do I know if something is polar or non-polar? We look at the electronegativity difference. So if I look at the carbon and the hydrogen, is there much of a difference? So I could give you the electronegativity for carbon maybe is about 2.5. For a hydrogen is about 2.1. How do I know if they are polar or non-polar? I subtract them together. So what would I get? 0.4. And if I have this value 0.4 of a difference, is it polar or non-polar? Non-polar. Okay? So if I am non-polar, I am stable. There's nothing about me that's going to get attracted to something else. Does that make sense? All right? So an alkane is so stable that it's not going to react with something else. So that means it doesn't have a functional group. Okay? Now, if I want to move from an ethane to an ethene, what happens? I get a double bond. And how do I get to the double bond? I lose two hydrogens. And these hydrogens, are they from the same carbon or from a different carbon? From different carbons. So I can lose this hydrogen and I can lose this hydrogen. And by losing them, I connect the carbons via a double bond. So now I have ethene. Okay, so this is ethene. Ene means I have a double bond. And this is ethane because it's all single bonds. Okay? Okay, so now I have this. What can you tell me about the double bond? Is this going to be more reactive? Why is it more reactive? It has more electrons because how many electrons do I have in a double bond? Okay. How many electrons do I have in a double bond? 4. I have 2 here and 2 here. Okay, so if this double bond has a lot of electron density there, if it sees a positive ion, do you think it's going to get attracted to it? Yes. So changing from a single bond to a double bond, I've created a functional group. So a double bond is an example of a functional group. I'm making the molecule more reactive. Do you get what I'm saying? So this is one way, is I create a double bond. And with these examples, I'm just still sticking to the hydrocarbon. What's a hydrocarbon? Just a hydrogen and a carbon. Now with the other functional group, I'm going to start introducing other atoms. Okay? So let's move from an ethane to an ethanol. What do you think an ol sounds like? So I have ethanol. Ethan, like ethane, has how many carbons? 2 carbons. So now I have 2 carbons. Ethanol sounds like OH group because it's going to sound like ethanol sounds like alcohol. Okay, so an OH group is an example of an alcohol. Okay, it's what makes an alcohol. Methanol, ethanol, propanol. Okay, and the rest of it is still going to be your hydrogen. So what did I do here? Moving from here to here, what did I do? Did I lose 2 hydrogens? What did I lose? I replaced one of the hydrogens with an OH group. What do we know about oxygen? Because? Does it have any lone pairs? Does oxygen have a lone pair? If I wanted to draw the Lewis dot structure for an oxygen, how do I draw it? How many valence electrons does an oxygen have? 6. Okay, so I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many bonds can it form? 2. So I have the carbon in this case and a hydrogen. Does it have any lone pairs? I have lone pairs. Do you think that these lone pairs are going to get attracted to something else? They're electrons at the end of the day. Okay? They will. So will this molecule be reactive or not? Did I add functionality to this or not? Okay? Now, it does add functionality because I have an OH group there. Do you think it will be soluble in water? it will make it soluble in water. I have OH, okay, and I have water. What kind of bonding interaction do you think I have there? Hydrogen bonding. Remember, the hydrogen bond is going to form when you have a hydrogen connected to what? Oxygen, nitrogen, or fluorine. So will this dissolve in water? Yes, it's going to form hydrogen bonding, which will allow it to dissolve. Would this be soluble in water? Is there anything about it that would make it soluble in water? No. Okay, so didn't I add functionality there? I started off with something that's insoluble in water, and when I changed the group, now it's soluble. Isn't this functionality? So one of the functional groups that you need to learn about is an alcohol. And an alcohol has a hydroxy group. Hydroxy, because it's the OH minus group. Okay? So with these questions on your final exam, I'm not going to ask you to name the molecule. I'm going to ask you to circle the functional group and tell me what it is. So you would circle it and say that this is an example of an alcohol because it's got the OH minus group. But I'm not going to ask you to name this at this point. Does that make sense? All right. Another thing that we could do is this. What did I do here? So again, I'm starting off from the same molecule, and I've done something to it. What did I do here? I added an iodine, okay? So now the iodine is instead of a hydrogen. I can pick any hydrogen. I'm just randomly choosing a hydrogen, okay? So iodine is an example of what? A halogen. It belongs to the halogen family. And the halogen family is which group? Group 17. What do we know about group 17 elements? They're highly electronegative. So do you think now this molecule is going to be reactive? Yes, I have an element there that's very electronegative, but it's going to react with something else. So did I make the molecule more reactive by adding an iodine? Yes. Okay, so this is what functionality means. I am substituting a hydrogen for another group or for another element that's going to make the molecule more reactive. Okay? So with these ones here, so I'll just say X, okay? And X is a halogen. And halogens are fluorine, bromine, okay? Chlorine, and iodine. Does that make sense? So if I ask you, what is the functional group here? You'll circle the I and say that this is an example of a halogen. Okay? Did I ask you to name it? It's actually really easy to name this one. You know how we name it? Iodoethane. So it's just the alkane, the halogen name, followed by the name of the hydrocarbon. Iodoethane. But you don't need to name it for the final. I'm just telling you. Okay? And with this one, it's ethanol. Ethan, because it's ethane. All means I have an alcohol there. Are we okay? So now how many functional groups do you see on the board? 3. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Clear?